Guess we're ready to begin. Awesome. All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to From the Blank Page panel. I'm Al Sotto, DMV-based actor, podcaster, sometimes a TV host, and sometimes a writer. And happy to be able to moderate this incredible panel that we have before us of great writers. And if we could, let's just start by introducing yourselves and just some of your writing accolades. Go ahead, please.
Absolutely. Hi, my name is David FRITZSON. I'm a writer and director originally from this area and am now based in Richmond, Virginia. And a lot of the content that I put together is a lot of short films that have run the film festival circuit. Most notably one that is called Wireless that is available on YouTube and recently surpassed 125,000 views after being launched this year. So that's the highlight. And then most recently had a micro short film, Small Talk, that premiered at Awesome Con Film Festival earlier this year.
Nice.
Woo!
All right. Julie?
Hi, I'm Julie HABERSTICK, and I really cut my teeth in the writer's room for the Showtime series Homeland. I was the writer's room assistant and writer's room associate for a couple years, and that's where I kind of got most of my education. I'm an independent writer, director, producer now. I also run Citric Focus Consulting, which is a creative service for folks where we work with writers, directors, producers, performers on really redefining their projects to make sure it's saying the thing that they want it to say. And in terms of accolades, I think my favorite accolade I've ever received was I won Badass of the Week at the Evening Muse in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Nice.
Love that. That's awesome.
Hello, everybody. My name is Christian DETRE. I am primarily a producer and director, though I spent the first, 20 years, I'm old, 20 years of my career writing for a number of different magazines and organizations. I was Vice Magazine's travel publisher and did a lot of got into film like primarily as my main horse to ride probably good 10, 11 years ago. And recently been producing a lot of fine art films and operas. I produced an opera at the Brooklyn Academy of Music about 4 years ago, and then worked with Sir Isaac Julian on his latest film, produced his last film, and which is currently at the Tate Museum in London. And then I have another film that I produced with Julian Roosevelt out of Berlin, which is now actually at the Melbourne Museum. I've been working in fine art films for quite a while, but I've been pushing my ability to get back into like actual full-time script writing, and I do have a couple. I have a series that's in production right now, 10-episode series with on hip hop, skateboarding, and graffiti in New York called New York State of Mind. Working with the Wu-Tang Clan on that, and then
Nice.
No, they're awful to work with. They're terrible. Don't work with them. But outside of that, I'm also developing an animated sci-fi television series with one of Adult Swim's, stars, Will Carsola, which Richmond people may know. I'm excited to be here and talk to you guys. So I hope I have something of value to tell you people. Yes. But yeah, thank you.
Thank you. All right, we got Troy.
My name is Troy Jeffrey Allen. I'm always bad at this. My 9 to 5. I'm a consumer marketing manager for a company called Diamond Comic Distributors, which is out here in Baltimore. Yeah, sorry, I didn't tell you that.
Diamond,
Steve Jeppy.
Steve Jeppy, yes. And so that's my job, and part of my job is also, because of that, I produce videos for them, I host videos for them, and I did go to school for film, so there's also that as well. At this point, I've probably written more comic book scripts than I have film or television scripts. So my biggest accolade at this point is I did an MF Doom tribute comic back in 2020 after he had passed. I'm sorry, back in 2021 after he had passed away in 2020. We then went and made a motion comic for it that skyrocketed to 35,000 views. Actually, it's still going, actually. Like earlier this year. I also worked on a book called Apocalypse 91, Revolution Never Sleeps, which I co-wrote the first story with Chuck D. And quite as it's kept, I have a Wu-Tang project coming up next year. And it's not that quiet. I tell
Wu-Tang
anybody.
is represented.
I tell anybody who will
Wow.
listen. You're right. And I'm actively in conversations. I probably shouldn't be saying this, but I'm actively in conversations to work on something for the Compton Cowboys, if you're familiar, Los Angeles Cowboy unit. Yeah, so, well, you know, if I don't get it, it'll be embarrassing. So, yeah, much more to come. So, thank you.
Awesome accolades with all the creative. So, very multifaceted, multi-talented panel that we have here, because not only writers, but filmmakers, directors, in front of the camera, actors themselves. But writing, first and foremost, is very, very important. Obviously, we have a writer's strike and an actor's strike going on right now. How important is writing to you? Because it seems like once the writers stopped, we're on strike, production halted, actors eventually went on strike. I really feel that it starts first and foremost with the writers. So we can go around.
Yeah.
Discuss that.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, you always hear about that a movie is made 3 times. It's first from the writer, and then it's made by the director, and then the editor. But it starts with the writer. That's the foundation of it. That's the beginning of it all. When it comes to this strike, there have been some scares of well-written AI scripts that have come out, or well-written AI comedic headlines that actually would have punchlines. That is pretty scary. But what's interesting about it is that there doesn't seem to be a real human connection with it, because there wasn't a real human that made it. Mm-hmm. So during this strike, I've actually found that I've been writing more hold up, being inspired by this, and learning more about just angry writers giving good advice to independent filmmakers on how to write stuff, on how to get your ideas out. And the thing that I can't stress enough is when you want to write something, you always want to write the thing that you think that you want to see on this big screen that you just haven't seen yet. Well, it's up to you to go make it. So it starts with you being the writer to do it. So go.
Yeah. Fantastic.
Well done.
Nice. Very nice.
Well said. I will say I had the privilege of working with some amazing writers in television for several years. And I was fairly young at the time when I started working with them. And to watch the brainstorms and the hours and hours that goes into the creation of a television series, of a television season, is insane. And to slowly watch the thoughts that are in one person's brain go into a room, get discussed, then make it into an outline, into a script. And then all it is a living document. And then it's sent to production. Nothing happens without just those thoughts in one's brain becoming a document that becomes the blueprint for something amazing, which goes into everybody's living rooms out across the world. So to your point about AI really not being able to create that human connection, that process, the thought to page to production, is something that is irreplaceable without original thought. And those original thoughts are going to continue to change given the way our society is going to continue to change. So there's no there's no replacement for us.
Yes.
I
Agreed.
would say.
Yep. Does everyone else agree? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. All right.
To me, writing is the original alchemy.
Mm.
It's the OG magic with a K. It is, I think, probably the first thing that separates us from the lower orders of animals, I guess. That sounds a little bad, but you know what I mean. But that's what separates us. I think storytelling is what separates us. Probably our first art, sitting around a fire and telling each other stories so we can remember our ancestors, or we can, say, what are those stars? What are the things around us that we can't really explain? We tell stories. And I think the storytelling itself is so intrinsic to actually our species that when you have a talent for making it exciting or making it compelling, I think is an incredible honor. Not to mention, it's a playground for, I'm sure, all of us. For all of you too. We all tell stories, we all tell jokes, we all try to what happened last Friday when we were out. These are all, it's the same thing. But I think when you're writing for film or writing for screen, you have like another goal. Like it's 75% art and then 25% showbiz. And that's something I think that we don't actually, we all like to talk about ourselves. Like, oh, we're just artists and we're so, fainting. But no, like there's showbiz involved, there's jazz hands involved. And I think when you're writing for film and you're writing for entertainment and whether it's serious or comedic or whatever it is, there's a certain, glitter you throw on the thing. That's whether just a perfectly turned phrase, a good beat that just like a dialogue, a conversation that sounds so natural, or one that doesn't sound natural at the Tarantino. None of those conversations sound natural, but they're awesome. They're awesome. They're so there's pithy and it's just the ability to play with those toys was one of my favorite things in the world. So yeah, that's how I feel about it.
Awesome.
I'm really just going to co-sign everything everybody's already said. Particularly, I like the bit about magic. I got a bookmark yesterday that said writing was magic, actually.
Yeah,
so it was really
that's
great
where I
that
got
you
it
too. I was actually on the director's panel earlier, and I'm going to actually crib something that somebody else said and add my own spin to it, which was that the stories are the only thing that we have left when we leave. Like that's it. And so, in art, and I pretty much think all types of art is some form of a story anyway. And I think that's why it's important. Straight simple. It's what we leave behind. And when we leave this planet, and the aliens come and they're like, what were humans? They'll get, they'll watch Medea movies.
I hope not.
And Jerry Springer episodes, and they'll totally have us figured out. So yeah, I just co-signing pretty much everything you guys said. I think our mythology is very important, and I'm one of those Joseph Campbell marks for sure. Yeah, that's all I got to say about that.
Fantastic. Wow, some great responses there for sure. Wow. So the title of this show, panel is From the Blank Page. So I want to take that question literally. You have a blank page in front of you, whether it's your word processor, whether it's old school notebook, you're writing your next story. What goes on through your head, through your process of your storytelling, and writing down your initial story?
Part of me regrets sitting in this chair because I always have to be first in this.
Would you like to marinate on that?
No, it's okay. I think there's two elements that I really focus on. I think about first the thing that I mentioned earlier about just that I hadn't seen before on screen. I would just like to see it, whether it's a story that I thought of or one that may be based on true events and I want to spin on it. And I have a very rough plot. And I have to remind myself, this is not going to be good, David. This is probably not going to be good at all. So it is like, for fans of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, it's very much like Charlie writing for the first bits of it. But it basically bounces back between two elements, is just a basic plot structure just to know what's happening, or really getting to know your characters. There are some times where I have ideas for characters that are so strong and already have such a personality, if they were sitting here, I could take them out for a beer after this and have a full conversation with them. And when they have that much depth, sometimes it's fun to say, I wonder where this story is going and where this character is going to take me to it. And the more I think about the character sometimes, that allows me to actually add more to the story and flesh out, more pages to do so, realizing what they're thinking, what their reactions might be, how would they feel in this situation. And again, totally Charlie writing at the beginning, but it allows me to at least have the idea out, because there is nothing more satisfying than having that first draft of, even if it's just a bunch of scribble material in your Apple Notes app, it's out there and it's out of here, and at least that starts. So when you're able to do that, that's kind of that first push from when it goes from the blank page to Charlie writing.
Nice. I love that.
In addition to being a screenwriter, I'm also a poet, and I carry around a little notebook with me almost everywhere and a little pen. And I am very moved by what I call kind of one-line poems just out in the world. And that might be just something I notice or something I hear or something I read or something, someone says to me directly, and it will just move me. And that winds up kind of going into the notebook, and it's my little collection of things that just kind of stays with me, and it just kind of helps my heart. And they don't often move into being things. Mostly they just kind of stay collective. Every once in a while, there's several different pieces that all of a sudden it's like, this feels like a story. This feels like it's got an arc to it. Or I understand how this makes me feel, and I'm willing to bet there's a lot of other people who feel the same way, and I want to, investigate it. And for me, I tend to start with character. And my favorite way to kind of start with a blank page is to do more of a stream of consciousness in the kind of in the mind of a character, and to really see if I can investigate what that person is kind of thinking and feeling and what concerns them, and to see if I can find a structure and find a plot by empathizing with a person that doesn't exist.
Awesome. I have an answer for this. Before I start, actually, I want to say one thing. Can Tony Robinson please come in and take a seat? My friend's been respectfully waiting in the hallway. I really appreciate it. But yeah, a round of applause for Tony Robinson, who's so very nice as to not interrupt everybody. But please sit down. I love you, buddy. I actually tend to start, and this is, oh my God, please forgive me for sounding pretentious, but I take it symphonically. And you take the big brassy brah, like it's in every trailer you watch, right? That big note, right?
Yeah.
So I want to take, Inception, yeah, exactly. So I want to take that big note. What's this about? What's the story about? What's the 7 deadly sins, or what or like one of the sins? What's the virtues, whatever. What is the thing about? And I consider that the maelstrom. And then you take who's caught up in the maelstrom, who's surfing the maelstrom, who's dying in the maelstrom. And you take, that's where the characters come from. It's like who's dealing with this swirl of controversy or conflict, or it's really dramatic. I'm sorry, but you take that, and then when you're able to build characters. I mean, they're all stock human beings, right? And we all deal with the same shit. Pardon my language. I don't know if that's allowed, but anyway, we're all dealing with the same stuff.
It's been said.
It's been said before. Or also,
Worse has been said, I think.
Anyways, but you take the characters and you have you throw people into an interesting scenario and in a conflict, and you build, what are the weaknesses or strengths of this person against the other. I don't know. It's kind of almost like a board game in some way. I take it very playfully. I mean, if I can put it really anyway, it's playtime for me. Like I really do appreciate it that way, and it's one of the reasons I love doing it. But once you do the characters and the situations, I don't know. You guys can all probably, and I'm sure a number of you out here are also filmmakers as well. When someone comes up to you and they're like, "Oh, dude, I have an idea for a movie," because if you're the guy that they know that makes, or the woman that they know that makes movies, then everyone's always someone coming up to you like, "Oh, wait, I got an idea for a movie," and then they proceed to describe. You're like, "Okay, so there's a guy standing on top of a truck, and he does a backflip onto this car, and then he punches a guy through the window, and then he jumps off and he says this." It's like, that's not a movie, dude. That's like a set piece, And I think sometimes as writers, even the ones that have done it a lot, you get to a point where you have a few really good ideas, but there's situations and there are moments, and you don't really, and that's why I try to make myself take the big picture, that big Brahm, take that big thing first and try to really see what beauty, horror, conflict, whatever can come out of that big note. And then that's where I go. Anyway, I probably over-explained that. So. Yeah.
No. I was actually going to say, I start playing with fonts first. That's the first thing I do. Yeah. I mean, part of it is I do comics, so the fonts are very important.
Comic Sans.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, not Comic Sans. No, please don't do that. Don't ever do that. Yeah. Your letter will be like, what the hell's wrong with you? Beyond that, I mean, and that's just the bullshit portion of it, right? That's just me playing a word processor, all right, I'm going to get to this eventually, sooner or later. I'm actually at a point now where I'm actually just now figuring out my process. I've tried a bunch of different things. I read Save the Cat. I read Peter David's book about writing comics. I've read the William Goldman books, and I just went all over the place and tried to find what works for me. And what I'm starting to realize is that, it's a lot of note taking, just sort of oh, that's a good idea, and you put it into a book, or what I've been doing lately is putting in Google Drive, in its own little folder. and saving it every couple of months. But I don't really have it until I know what the theme is. And that's kind of springboarding off of what you were saying, which is like, I have this character in place. I know what the story is that I want to tell. But until I know what the theme is, it's not really quite there. I have an idea, I have a notion, but the theme kind of really just kind of helps you cut through all this. It helps you self-edit in a way that is just, so beneficial ultimately in the long run. So once I have the theme down, and sometimes that happens in the script. Like, I'm not going to lie, sometimes it happens like you might be 20 pages in and you're like, I've done that before where, I finished a whole issue and I'm like, this is going to the trash. I'm not even going to show this to this artist. But yeah, like that's what I think my process is now. It might change in a year, but that's what I think my process is now.
All right, awesome. Let's talk about genres. Troy, obviously, superhero comic book genres is probably one of your strengths, and first and foremost.
So the funny thing is, I've never done a superhero book.
Okay.
Yeah, never done it.
Even though you have experience in the comic.
In the comic, yeah. I did a Nerds versus Jocks pro wrestling comic.
Okay.
A lot of the stuff I've been doing lately has been very much hip hop adjacent.
Okay.
And I've been making my home in that. So I guess that is a genre. It's not really a comic genre, but it's a genre. So
okay. I would like to ask the panel what your favorite genre to write is, and what is the most challenging or even least favorite genre.
Oh, sorry, that wasn't a question.
But you can start Troy this time, so that way Dave is last.
My favorite? I wrote for a website called Action to Go for like 10 years. And so I love action, and it could be martial arts. It could be, like the way we viewed it is like action is if the action drives a plot, it's an action movie. That's kind of how we always looked at it. So, it could be martial arts, it could be crime. It doesn't have to be a knockdown, drag out James Bond set piece, but it can be like, like a chase down an alley or something like that ultimately gives you the final outcome of the story. Those were action movies. And, so it can be everything from John Woo to, I don't know, The Killer to, actually that's John Woo, I don't know, I said that twice. Everything from John Woo to Gone Girl, like, you know what I mean? So that's kind of how we approached it, and I'd say definitely that is my favorite genre.
Okay, and then your most challenging or least favorite?
I'm learning to write without action.
Okay.
That's actually a thing too. It's an interesting thing to go like, okay, you can't have a shootout, you can't have a fight here, like, you know what I mean? Like, maybe these characters should talk it out. Maybe that's a healthy thing for people to do. And so that's been a challenge. But once you kind of start to figure out, well, it's all conflict, it's just about how you get to it, it becomes less taxing,
Nice.
Right. For me, actually, my favorite, I think, the thing that I most gravitate to, and I think I have the most, talent at, is in the kind of more fantasy, sci-fi worlds that have more of a tonality of like Douglas Adams. I think pretty much everything I've ever written has some Douglas Adams in it. I've read the Hitchhiker's Guide books at an early age and read them over and over and over again. So comedy, pithy, just very unexpected turns of phrase. Those are the type of things that I really I get the most jollies out of when it actually comes together, right? I'm like, that's funny. We'll laugh at that. But I do enjoy I enjoy writing for scenarios where humanity has to look outside of itself to look inside of itself and find itself in an external conflict. And maybe that's just a little futurism. I don't know, but something I've been just personally fascinated with for a long time. But I find that in that kind of self-discovery through unexpected circumstance is where I think I find the intersection of my interests versus my interests and my competency. I think come right there. That's what I enjoy. But as far as challenging, it's funny because I'm a huge softie, and I'm a huge softie, but romance. I have a hard time with it. I really do. Like, I think a romantic dialogue, I end up laughing at myself. And my wife's here right now, so she'll laugh at me too. I'm a huge I will I will be very verbose about my love and affection, but I feel sometimes it just induces eye rolls. And it's really hard to like write that. It's hard to write it for other audiences that aren't, whatever. That's what I don't like.
And Julie, yeah, you see a lot of episodic dramas on your CV. So does that factor into your favorite?
Truthfully, no.
Okay.
I actually prefer to write films over television,
Okay.
which I know is sin of all sins. Because I know television is really a writer's medium, or they say television is a writer's medium, whereas film is a director's medium. But I really love the self-contained story, which is one of the reasons why I love short films, is because you get that kind of concentrated space. And my kind of favorite genre is, I don't know if you would call it a genre per se, but coming of age stories are just like, that's where my heart lies. Even if that coming of age happens a little later in life, I'm really drawn to intimate, really personal stories. So that tends to be drama. So mostly with like a little bit of a comedic edge. And I have a lot of, in terms of a genre that I'm less focused on, I have a lot of respect for fantasy and sci-fi, but I'm a little intimidated by it, I have to say. So I have a lot of respect for it because it's my understanding with fantasy and sci-fi, you create a world in which we get to look closer at ourselves because there's more distance from our real world. And
Very well said. Yeah.
and that's what I respect most about it. The thing that I struggle with is the rules are so open-ended, like depending on the world that you're building. Like you can make obviously you have to make the rules of your world, but you can make the rules whatever they are. And that openness, I think, is very, it's very exciting, but it's a little scary. But on I guess the thing that I also gravitate towards that's on a similar note is I really love doing period pieces, because similarly you get to look a little closely at things that are happening in our world with enough distance that it feels comfortable to take a look. Yeah, there you go.
That's awesome. Thank you. David?
Yeah. I started off being heavily inspired by very dialogue-heavy people. Paul Thomas Anderson, Kevin Smith. My last film, Wireless, we were talking about accolades earlier. Wireless actually screened at Kevin Smith's first film festival, the Smodcastle Film Festival. So once that happened, it's like, well, it's going up on YouTube. That's it. But lately I've been, trying to experiment with different genres and hopping around. I've been thinking the whole time what I'm going to say with, these great answers. And I think I'm still sticking with what I had, which is I really have a tune for drama. If there are 3 films that might give you an idea of what type it is, because that can be such a vague term, the 3 films that live rent-free in my head that I think I've seen in the last 5 years or so, and for anyone looking for good ones, write them down. Good Time, Pig, and The Sound of Metal. All 3 of these films, wildly different from each other, characteristically and such, but all of them have characters that are impacted by actions of others, mostly through dialogue. Things that are said to them, things, truths that they are, struggling to, wanting to deny and are having a hard time accepting. And when it does, it truly breaks them and it captures them on camera. It's those kinds of moments that I would love to continue writing for. You'll see it in each of these films, I guarantee it. I don't want to say anything more because I'm very much like anti-spoiler and such, but I promise you'll know when you see them. And so that also happens in Wireless, that happens in other projects as well. But I think another thing that would be challenging is, I think the most challenging one for me would be comedy. I've recently written a few scripts for it, but the problem is when you're in the writer's room is that you have jokes that are hilarious to you and your friends or you and your colleagues that you put together, and then it goes to an audience and nothing. I actually started writing in college, and I also did stand-up comedy, and I remember the first time I ever bombed on a joke that worked at the same venue over and over, and it didn't work that time. And I remember looking at that stage light, hearing silence, and I never felt so alone in my entire life. But having said that, there's a core memory I have too of my first comedy screening, and one joke that I was really hoping would land, and just when it happened, it just erupted with laughter. and is so satisfying. So it almost feels like a big gamble writing comedy to me, is knowing, what stuff is going to stick, what stuff is just like funny to you and your friends in the writer's room. So I'm always trying to challenge myself too. And I mean, there's so many genres that I am intimidated by. Sci-fi is actually one I'm looking to do as well. I have a short fan fiction, one that I'm putting together. And so I kind of cheated because the world's already made for me. But in a way, it's interesting to be like, well, how would this character work with the kind of things that I tend to write? How would I have my own signature style on it? And that's been very challenging too. So it's a great genre.
Fantastic answers. Wow. All right, let's talk about how some writers use their own personal experiences and some just completely come up with their own creative ideas and not base anything off of things they experience. Some writers like to incorporate that, whereas some writers are a little more private and just want to put their full creativity on the page. So let's talk about original experiences versus full creative process.
Yeah, I can definitely start with this one. So my last micro short film, Small Talk, is entirely based on a true story. And it's 60 seconds long, and it's just an awkward conversation after someone had vandalized my apartment complex after they got evicted. And it had just obscenities written on every single floor of every single building. And there was one that was about this big on the elevator and said, redacted properties, eats big, fat, stinky, hairy, redacted. And
fill in the blank.
It's right.
Sandwiches?
Yes. and it was just one of those things where, we're in a tough world where the rent is too high and pay is too low. And there was this cheerful guy next to me like, have you noticed all the vandalism that's happening around here lately? And it's just right above his head. And I'm just like, yeah, it's kind of hard to miss. Like, how do I say this without being a jerk? And I remember going home, taking a nap, and waking up being like, oh my God, that's my 60-second short film. And screened at AwesomeCon like 6 months ago. So it's there. You get moments like that where it's like a ball of lightning right there. But then you also have to kind of surround yourself with what inspires you to, or things that might come up like left and right. Like I would say, never dismiss anything. Earlier, I think you were talking about basically getting unsolicited movie ideas from people saying, have you ever had a movie? If I had $1 for every time that happened, I'd probably be able to fund my own short film. But I remember in a sea of family members doing that, I have one family member who's a very unique character, and I started writing a short script about an exaggerated version of that character. And then it morphed into something entirely different. But you just kind of just look what's around you, and just keep in mind what's around you too. I'll see advertisements. Sometimes I want to make a satire out of it. It's a comedic thing. But it's just what's really, when you're looking for something different, I'd say find what surrounds you, and I just can't stress enough, find the thing that makes you just go, I still haven't seen this in the theater. What's stopping you from making it? Make the thing. So
Nice. I love that.
I often find that even when I start a project start a script that I feel like has nothing to do with my life, eventually I find, that looks like something I'm processing through a script. And at first, when I first noticed that, I was a little worried about it. I was like, oh no, this is so personal, or this is coming out so quickly. It felt like I had exposed myself a little bit without intending to. And I really actually appreciate that now, because I feel like as personal as you can make a project, the more specific and personal it's going to be for someone who's seeing it. So I feel like there's worlds in which you set out intentionally to tell a very personal story, and that's amazing. But I think whatever story we tell, within reason, it always winds up personal.
I think I 100% agree with that. On that tip, I mean, I've had a really stupid life. Stupid is the best word for it, I think. I mean, I've been very, very fortunate to have to been involved with a lot of up and coming musicians or actors or this, that, and the other thing, just even socially through projects like magazine. You would know, I'm one of the founders of RVA magazine, and then Chew on This magazine before that, and all this. But we just had us going out to Vegas and meeting this. I met. Anyway, a lot of experience. Yeah, I'm gonna leave these out. But I mean, a lot of experiences with a lot of different, really, really interesting, fun people. When I say stupid, I mean fun. It's been so much fun. So contrasting on the comedy angle, I think I don't even have to like think of jokes. I like literally can just think of the really dumb things that have happened and over again around me, to me, by me, whatever. But I mean, it's been such a whirlwind and such a roller coaster that I think through my writing, I think, the tone of my writing has a lot to do, bears a lot of resemblance to the, madcap, or whatever you're going to use that word. That word's from the 50s. But have that kind of like the adventures that you don't know where they're going to end. You barely remember where they started. And, but that factors into what I mentioned earlier, the show that I was, working on, the Adult Swim thing, is about a band that gets signed by an intergalactic AR rep, and the AR rep doesn't understand that it's first contact for humans when he comes down and like, I'm going to sign this band and you're going to play around the galaxy. But then, all this shit, but it's the connection to my dealing with bands that were living in a warehouse together and sleeping on the floor. And then 6 months later, they're like, stupid famous, and they have more money than they know what to do with. See, that's hilarious, by the way, to see really like people that were eating ramen 2 weeks ago getting flown out to like Paris to like be on anyway. It's just like it's fish out of water stuff a lot of times, but that fish out of water of a scenario of having to expand your world at a moment's notice, and I find that shit fascinating, and I think that's really. I draw from those experiences because they're fun and they're funny. And for Christ's sake, we have enough BS to deal with every day. So that's where I try to come from.
Awesome. And I had a lot of thoughts when you asked that question. Mm-hmm. So obviously everything you write comes from you. So there is a personal aspect of it in everything you write, right? That said, I was just a juror for the Ringo Awards, which is like this comic industry award. And there were maybe like 17 different autobiographical comics. And I hated I want to say 15 of them. And, it's one of those things where, not everything has to be like flesh and blood. Like you don't have to put it in print. I'm of the same mind as you, where it's like the stuff that I put in there is, sometimes you're processing stuff and you don't even realize it. I mean, that's real. But there's another aspect of it too, where it's like some of the stuff that goes into the stories I tell are stuff I've heard in bars and clubs. It's stuff I've heard at conventions. It's stuff that I would never have came up with, but this asshole over here said it. So it's you got to be careful. I think is the key thing here, because it's some of my favorite writers have been canceled recently because they it's one of those things where people started looking at their work and looking at their personal life, and they're like, that's inappropriate. And now I'm starting to see it in the actual TV show that I watch now. So there's that. So I guess the best thing I can say is get therapy. While you're writing, but also lack of therapy is also probably good for writing as well. So either way.
Yeah, sometimes you have to be careful about what you put on, from pen to paper to make sure that all audiences...
Make sure it's not a manifesto.
Has anyone ever encountered that? Maybe turned in a script and maybe a director producer said, I don't think I really like that line or joke. Has that happened to any one of you before?
Yes.
Yes?
Many times.
Yeah?
I think comedy specifically, if you're writing comedy at all, that's I think the red zone. That's the danger zone. Yeah. And being an evolved human being, I'm very sensitive to sensitivities at the same time. And sometimes you want people to kind of get over themselves a little bit and just kind of be able to laugh at themselves, but you can't dictate that. Right. You can't make people do that. And you don't know what people's boundaries are, when it comes to that legitimate boundaries. And it's tough. And yeah, I mean, I can look back at things I wrote, 18, 19 years ago and thinking I was being hilarious. and then really come back and be like, oh, dude, man, God damn, I really hope nobody ever reads this again. It's like, I'm really glad this is only in print. It's not on the internet, I mean, but not
Right.
maliciously though.
Yeah.
Not maliciously, and I think really 9 times out of 10, when you talk about you have a friend who's a writer that kind of gets canceled or whatever,
Yeah.
whatever. I mean, it happens, and a lot of times it's deserved, But and there are consequences to things, but there is such a fine line. There's such a fine line, but I think the courage to find that line is in the hearts of a select people that really like, okay, well, I understand I'm going into territory but I'm going to entertain and I'm going to make you see ourselves in a light that's maybe not always flattering all the time, but it's but we can deal with it. And then there's a fine art to being able to get your point across in a controversial subject. You mentioned Always Sunny.
Mm-hmm.
They do. I don't know anyone that does it better than them. Actually, I don't know anyone that does it better than them because you already know they're assholes. So anything that comes out of their mouth is just, you can throw it away. Is like, that's what an asshole would say, and that's kind of the point. But that's part of writing, though. That's part of the joy of writing. Is like, if you have something assholeian to say, put it in the mouth of someone who's already an asshole.
Yep.
So there you go. That's how I feel about it.
Anybody else experience?
Like I try to run stuff by people I trust before I even give it to a producer or like an editor or anything like that.
Yeah.
That's not to say that it always works, of course, but like I also have a problem writing romances sometimes, and so my default is like, I'm just going to do Al and Peggy Buddy. They hate each other, and that's all I'm going to do, right? But that doesn't always call for that, and so I sometimes, especially with relationships, I kind of always, I'll hand it off to my girlfriend or whatever, and just kind of run. I was like, does this ring true? Like, not even necessarily in our relationship, but like, does this sound like something like someone would say in this situation? So your circle is also a good way to edit yourself.
Some folks might not be aware. There's also a whole industry that is sensitivity reading. So there are people whose job it is to literally just read your script for those issues and will give you feedback on that level. So that service does exist as well.
I would also advise that if you're unsure, like for example, I've had to write characters that, my original scripts were ones of like my personal experiences. So that's easy. I knew what it was like to be there. But sometimes I had to be in the shoes of other people, other genders, other races, anything like that, that don't be afraid to reach out to people that have gone through those similar experiences too, whether they're filmmakers or not, and to see if it resonates with them. Because you may find things that surprise you. You may find that you were onto something and you got it, or you might learn something that you can add to it that's only going to add more resonation to that audience that you're trying to speak to.
All right, wow. So I'm going to ask one more question, then we'll get to audience questions. This is a fun question. This is your fantasy script pitch. Pick your favorite director, actors to portray in your script, and why.
Whoa, that's a huge question.
Yeah.
You have
that one, man.
You have a huge, ultra huge budget. You can hire any director, actors you want, whatever team you want. Who would you put together to produce your feature script? Unlimited budget.
Dang.
Leo DiCaprio, Martin Scorsese, or Kevin Smith, like you mentioned.
Yeah, we're just,
And anyone can start when they're ready.
okay.
Living or dead?
We're already talking fantasy, so
Okay, right.
we can-
Yeah, all right.
yeah.
Yeah, it's a loaded question.
I know.
Yeah.
It doesn't even have to be someone famous.
No,
That's true.
Yeah.
I'll jump in.
Okay, great.
And this is a bit of a cop-out answer, but I have not directed a feature yet, and that is the next big thing on my ticket. And so
Write and direct.
yes. So I've got a script that I've been working on for quite some time that it's like, this is the thing that I want to be my directorial debut.
Okay.
So that would be the piece. And I honestly, with an unlimited budget, fantastic. I still want to work with unknown actors in the process.
Okay.
Very cool.
Very good.
All right, mine's really weird. I would love to make a Ralph Bakshi inspired animated film with Sir Ian McKellen and Sir Patrick Stewart as time cops, elderly queer time cops that travel around the universe at different times as foodies. They're not doing any investigations at all. They're just like going around and like traveling around and like on the dime, on like the galactic whatever dime. And they have to turn in reports that like make it seem like they're doing something that they're supposed to be doing. And it's, you know, kind of they interact with Genghis Khan or they interact with, you know, some of that, whatever. But really it's just because they're just on vacation hanging out, you know, when they should be doing their job.
That's awesome.
I just made that up.
Fantastic.
And okay, the only thing I think about is, I guess I'll go in the direction of a comic book thing. You know, I said I don't write superheroes, but I love Marvel stuff. You know, I just love the Marvel stuff. I think it is good storytelling, or at least it's complex storytelling anyway. Like the way that they assemble these things together, no pun intended. And some people got that. I always thought it would be really cool if, I don't know who would direct this or produce this. Well, I guess it's Marvel. Kevin Feige would produce it, right? But I always thought it'd be really cool if they did a 60s bullpen story about the Marvel creators, like about Stan Lee and how, you know, some people hate Stan Lee, some people love Stan Lee, about Jack Kirby and, you know, the Nazi puncher Jack Kirby, you know, the eccentric weirdo Steve Ditko. And I would approach it kind of Mad Men style. Like that's the direction. I forget who the guy is who produced Mad Men. I forget who the creator.
Matt Weiner.
Matt Weiner. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So maybe him. But and I know it's not like, you know, it's not some extended universe thing, whatever. But you know, I think it's important. Mythology is important, and I think, you know, talking about the people that made this stuff is important. So I guess that would be my pitch.
Like Oppenheimer for comics.
Yeah, kind of like Alamo Drafthouse. Yeah. So yeah, just I think that would be interesting. I don't know, and I guess if I had to throw a director in there, say, I don't know, I throw Martin Scorsese or something. I don't know. I think that'd be kind of wild, right? So,
Right.
I haven't worked on that.
And David.
Yeah. It took me a while to think of like what cast, what crew, but I like how we're introducing crew members in there too. And I love bringing out unknown actors as well because there's such raw, great talent out there I'm seeing left and right. I follow a comedian named Evan Williams who just made a bunch of like viral TikTok videos, but he is legitimately a wonderful actor. And Nikki Howard as well, Steve Emerson. So I would love to work with them. And I talked about dabbling in different genres and stuff. We haven't had a good like Jingle All the Way style Christmas movie in a long time, like since probably Jingle All the Way. But there's a lot of things that have changed since then with with you know, modern technology and such, and just what we have in filmmaking. So I would love to make a raw, dark, gritty Christmas film around that, you know, time frame that makes people debate: is it a Christmas movie? Is it not? Like Die Hard. And to add to the young and upcoming actors, I really admire the Safdie brothers and how they take a lot of non-actors and really just throw them in these raw situations. So I would actually love to have them as producers. They recently produced a HBO series called Telemarketers, and I just immediately I could just tell it had their influence and their style just by watching the first like 10 minutes of it. So that would probably, if I had unlimited budget, I would love to just see what they could do with that.
Fantastic. Well, some great answers by the panel. All right, audience, it's your turn. If you have a question for one of our writers on the panel, please stand up, raise your hand. Yes. Okay, maybe in the front row, except for the front row.
I just would love to hear you guys speak more to writing not from your personal perspective. Like, how do you sort of touch on it, like going through that process of, you know, like how do you start that writing for something you can't touch, but like empathizing, I guess, is how we talk about empathy.
Do you mind? I wanted to say first, I think first of all, you got to love people. You got to really love people. I mean, you got to love people regardless. I mean, even they have the shittiest views and they just represent themselves as the shittiest person. They also have like an inner dialogue They also have their joys, and they have their despairs. They have their things that they conflict in their own mind. You just gotta love people, and you also gotta know when you don't know, and be cognizant of when you don't understand somebody's situation. So you ask. Like you were saying, there's people you can talk to, like you can ask questions. I mean, and you know, if you have to really sit back and use your imagination for what somebody's going through, always put them in. You know, if you're gonna do that, you know, come from it with that love. Come from it with the idea that every human being that has ever lived has wanted the best for themselves and the people they love. And they sometimes don't know, they've been taught the wrong thing. They don't know how to, like, you know, express themselves, their anger issues, whatever the fuck it is God, really, I'm a sailor. But whatever it is that troubles them, that they're human. And I think if I ever have an issue trying to find something, you know, a kernel of something, I go there. Yeah, it's love. It's always love.
I'll piggyback on that a little bit. So do you have a background in acting, perchance? No. Oh, you maybe. Got it. So if I think for writers and for directors, like a really great acting class can be so useful, because the character development and the headspace that you have to get in for scripts that are completely not your own and for characters that you might not agree with and whatnot that's a phenomenal, it's a phenomenal tool. And the other thing, depending on the kind of character you're trying to empathize with, research is a huge tool. And for me, it's less like the research you can do online and more human research. So, you know, talking with, you know, if it's an expert, not just like if you want to be writing about like a microbiologist, not just reading about microbiology, but talking to another microbiologist so that you are really understanding the deeper human aspects of your research in addition to the factual elements.
I couldn't agree more about interviewing people and asking. I wrote Wireless because it takes place in a cell phone store, and I worked in a cell phone store for 3-4 years, so I figured I knew enough. But at the same time, it didn't feel right. So I think I gave a script to about 10 different like cell phone store Apple employees to look at, and received like very valid criticism. Like, this would not be realistic. I would not do this in this situation. And it pays off brilliantly, because years later, as it's now on YouTube, there are people commenting saying, this is exactly how I felt in that store that I never could explain to other people. So don't be afraid for criticism as well, is all I say. Because I mean, that was basically exactly what I was going to say, it's to ask questions. But don't be afraid for criticism. And I'd also say, have multiple sources, because, you know, I wouldn't just count it on one. They could just be a very serious experience one person had and not so on the other. But it's your call as a writer to decide, you know, what the story is you want to take with what you've heard.
The only thing I really add to that is, and it's kind of the same version of everything everybody else has said, is listen to people, you know, and like, you know what your story is, right? Like, you know the story you have to tell, so you kind of have to make a judgment call about, well, that cannot apply here. Like, you know, like this person your character might be a narcissist, and the person that you ask is actually probably the nicest person you've ever known in your entire life, you know, but there's maybe some cultural relation to those two characters that you need that aspect there. And so that's always been my thing. I tend to not, you know, truthfully, when it comes to cultures and nationalities, I tend to not write anything if I don't know the person already at some point in time. Like, you know, like if I have a friend who's from Dominican Republic, I have a friend from Dominican Republic, like I'm asking him like details, like, you know what I mean? And so that's kind of my comfort zone. And if I have to go outside that comfort zone, like with this Compton Cowboys thing, I'm probably gonna have to I'm thinking I'm gonna go to this ranch in Compton at some point in time, which it was gonna be very interesting. And I also thinking about maybe I should learn how to ride a horse. You know, why the hell not? You know, and we'll see. I mean, maybe time won't allow that, but you know, it's about what you actively seek out and what you already have access to.
Anyone else have anything to add to that?
No, really.
Okay. Any other questions? Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, so I have a question about practice as quantity versus quality. I want to get your opinion, because I think Stephen King said that he has a quota of words that he's tries every day. Do you try to write consistently just anything, or do you focus on what you're writing, like quality versus quantity?
I love this question. Thank you for this, because writing should be fun, but also it is hard work to do, and so you do have to write whether you want to or not. I found this only this year, and I've been writing for years. Only this year have I found a good balance for it, because I found I've gone a solid year without writing before, and it felt very odd and not like me. What I have found is that sometimes I would think to myself, oh, I should only write the script that people are going to want to hear, or I should only write the screenplay that I know I'm going to be able to make. If there is any idea, no matter the budget, whether it's something there's no way it could be made by you, like don't think with your wallet, write it anyway. Because the fact that you have the idea, keep in mind, nobody else really does. Maybe it's something similar, but you have your own unique idea, and it deserves to be out of here and onto paper. So I've been doing things where I've just been writing some stuff, and I just look at it 3 days later and say, I don't see this really going anywhere, but that's okay. I'm glad it's finally on a page. So it allows me to end up, what the average comes out to is like I'm writing at least 2-3 nights a week typically, and usually a page or two each. Doesn't sound like a lot, but it's something that it's basically like the tortoise and the hare. You're just slowly making it there. So I would just advise, like, when it strikes you, just don't dismiss any idea, even if it's not the best idea you ever had. Put it down anyway. It might surprise you. Your characters might surprise you. You might have something better than you think. So,
I mentioned this before. Like I do a lot of notes, to the point that like some stuff is just sitting there that's been sitting there for 5 or 6 years, probably longer, and I'm only now working on it. When it comes to work for hire, same thing though. Like it goes into like some sort of document, whether it's handwritten or whatever, and it's just notes. And it's like this: it's the good stuff, the bad stuff, the absolutely stupid, offensive stuff, like whatever it is that you need. And then I go back and I just try to put it in order of what I understand should be the structure for the story. So I don't know. Does that answer your question a little bit?
Yeah.
Okay. You don't sound sure. Maybe I didn't. I'm sorry.
I would add to that. I think quantity versus quality, which it's. I think writing is like any pursuit. It's a muscle. It's like you don't run a marathon if you haven't been training, for a minute. And I'm saying this from experience of doing it the opposite way. So I'm like, there's plenty of times where I'm like, oh my God, I have like 4 different scripts sitting in my Google Drive. Mm-hmm. Also great tool, use it. Mm-hmm. But that I haven't touched in a minute, and I feel bad about it, and then you start writing and you don't like that idea. Let's do what you were saying. Write it down anyway. Mm-hmm. It really is. And the funny thing is, like training, like getting up in the morning and running a few miles or whatever, you're going to hate it the first few times. It's going to feel false. It's not going to feel good enough, whatever. Just write it anyway. And then after a few weeks, when you're like, that's your routine, like you get up in the morning or before you go to bed, whatever your routine is, whenever it happens. But it makes it so when you are on a deadline, mm-hmm. when you are like work for hire, whatever, and then you need to write something, and it's like, bing, bang, boom, you can do it right away. Because like, I worked that muscle. Mm-hmm. I know that muscle. I know how it works. I know what I want to say. I know how I want to say it. And it works out great. But even with that, I'm going to say this and this, no matter how often you write, quality versus quantity, we're talking about that. No matter how often you write, you're going to get that eureka moment. You're going to have that moment of inspiration. You're not going to have it most of the time. But when you do, that quality moment, you have to respect it and dedicate yourself to getting the words on the page. Yeah, I don't care what else you're doing. Like if you have it and like, oh my God, that's an incredible idea, stop what you're doing, write it down. And that's the only advice I can give.
All right. I think you had a question. Or do you have anything to add?
I did want to gently say, one, I do think it is a personal thing too. Like it's something that you're going to have to experiment with. You're going to have to decide like what feels right to you. So if you're really busting your butt to just like get a bunch of words on the page and it's not fueling you, it's not feeling good after whatever period of time, like no one is going to be able to tell you the exact right system for you in terms of getting your best work out. So I think it's really smart to experiment with it and to, to give things a go, but then also to eventually like really be listening to yourself and go in that direction. And I also just want to add like a little bit of respect for a gathering time. So yes, writing is a muscle. Yes, like you should be at it, but I think we often, we focus very much on production and we focus on like being productive in our creative practice. And I think there is just as much value in taking some time to really allow the inspiration to be with you and to go out and pursue those things as well.
Actually, you know what, if I can just follow up. Okay, quantity versus quality, right? The quantity portion is the notation portion for me anyway. Like it's just note, like this idea, wherever it is, you be the shower. I've hopped out of the shower and like punched something on my phone before. Like that's the quantity portion for me. It could be all the good stuff and the bad stuff. The quality portion is for me, is when I start putting those things into a structure, whether it's a 3-act structure or whatever. And then you're starting to see like, all right, this idea is going to take this story in a different direction. I can't use this, you know what I mean? Or maybe this isn't an entire scene. Maybe this is just an offhanded comment, you know what I mean? And so to me, that's the quality portion where you're really kind of fine tuning all these crazy ideas you've had. And then the other final quality portion is, you ask your circle and before you send it to an editor and like, does this make sense? Does this work? So.
Yeah. It is. Definitely it is.
Absolutely.
So.
All right. Awesome. Anyone else to add? I think we have time for one more question, I think. One more audience question. I know you had a question. I think we have time for 2. Those will be the final 2. You can go ahead. You're waiting.
Yeah, my question, I guess, is why are audiences attracted to the indie? And also, what kind of skills do you have writing about the indie hero? And how do you develop that character if you have those skills writing about the indie?
See, all my characters are anti-heroes. But I mean, oddly enough, I find Deadpool obnoxious, so I don't, yeah, I mean, like it's one of those things I don't like the Dudley Do Right, the goody two shoes character. For me to write, I can watch somebody do that, like you know what I mean. Like I love the Captain America movies, like you know what I mean. But I can't write that character, and I've tried, and it's just like it just doesn't work for me. So yeah, like all my characters are anti-heroes for that reason. It's sort of I think it's really important that they have flaws, that they're not perfect out the gate. I mean, that's just basic screenwriting stuff. Like, they have the guy with a problem, and then how they overcome that problem over the course of 2 hours or 4 issues or 5 issues or something like that.
I think the anti-hero is an archetype that resonates because most of the time it's our frustration that everyone feels, and we deal with our frustrations, and we have to deal civilly and politely with people. And the anti-hero is our, I guess our id unrestrained. It's what you get to do, what you get to fantasize about saying to someone that says something even remotely rude. Then you could like haul off on them, or you're like some, situation where, violence is never the answer, but, in a movie and it feels good. It's cathartic, and it's not because any of us would actually want to do this thing out loud in person, but the anti-hero is attractive because that character has less restraint on them than we do in our lives. And we don't want to do it, but we like watching it. That's it. And if you're having to write that person, I think that's where that you have to tap into that. Just understand that this isn't a role model I'm writing. Deadpool, not a role model. But the fact that he just gets shot 80 times and cut in half and whatever and still slices up the bad guy at the end. Whatever, it feels good. It's unrealistic. It's dream time, but whatever. It feels good. It's catharsis.
Well said.
Thanks. Yeah.
Anyone? Okay.
For the sake of time, just all I'm going to say is what they said, and because I feel they're relatable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then also, they're different type of anti-heroes, right? Like, I mean, yeah, you have Deadpool, but you also have, like, Dirty Harry. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, and then, so that's another direction you can go with that, where it's sort of like, all right, he's he definitely crosses the line a lot. You know what I mean? And he's definitely racist, right? Yeah, I mean, that's also true, right? But that's an examination, like, and it's okay to have those. So
It is.
Just amusing, like amusing, not amusing. I wonder if a part of it is because we all secretly like very much criticize ourselves, and if there's a part of it that like we feel that we are all bad people on the inside, so that when we see it on screen, it feels more real and more earnest to us than something that is a good person, even if that's actually what we present as.
actually, I love that answer. It's a great answer.
Yeah. In fact, to your point about like Captain America, you watch Captain America movie. He will make the most like I'm the guy and so makes all the right decisions all the time and always has the right opinion. The movie's not written around his opinions. It's written about everyone's reactions to his opinions. All the jokes in the movie are about how goody two shoes he is, and those jokes happen and they land because we're not goody two shoes. None of us. I don't care who you are. The more you say that you are, the less you actually are. That's my experience anyway. But yeah, that's. Yeah, Captain America is a great example of that. I mean, we like to watch him because we like to think there's people that exist like that. But the comedy and the heart of that film resides in everyone around him reacting to the fact that he isn't an anti-hero.
Right.
That's on, guys.
Oh, yes, we're going to do the raffle.
Who's going to pull the raffle number?
Somebody's going to pull the winner.
Not me.
I'll pull it.
You going to do it?
Yeah, why not?
Lucky
You
Dave.
just say it too?
If you want me to, I'll
Yes.
say it. Say
All
it.
right.
So whatever you want.
Who's it going to be? Who's it going to be?
Let's see. It is 3, 9, 8, 7, 9, 4, 5.
So I won a raffle yesterday, so if you want to choose again.
Look at this guy.
Jackson.
Look at this guy. He's not an
Oh, you
anti-hero.
won yesterday.
Just go down the line.
Yeah, somebody else has to pick now.
Wait,
Lucky you. I think we'll still...
Jackson, are you sure? Are you? Oh. All right. I've got 3987953.
Yeah. Right on.
Oh my God.
What is it?
Oh, okay.
Game's rigged.
This is the wrong bag.
Okay, do it again.
Third time's the charm.
On the last
Watch, I'm
panel.
gonna pick one that this person's not even in the room anymore. All right, I got 3987952. See what I tell you?
Yeah, all
Wait.
right.
Is that you?
Well, he won twice, so he gave that to her. The second.
No. Well, then she gets to win.
It's not. He gave her one.
This is the most effed up raffle I've ever seen.
If you look under your tables, if you look under your chairs, there are knives.
Yeah, like you and I.
Let's be honest. You gotta let her decide. All right.
All right.
All right.
We just wanted everybody to get a chance to read numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who hasn't won a raffle in this room?
There we go.
3987950. That one
gosh.
Did you get all of the?
I'm starting to think you're the problem.
I think the universe is trying to make them win.
too. Yeah.
And I think we
Yeah.
should maybe submit to the universe and just give them the prize anyway.
And then they
Honestly.
Al has not.
Alice,
There
yeah.
you go. There you go.
One more.
There you go.
This is crazy.
One more.
This is literally crazy.
Movie magic.
All
I
right.
mean, it's the last.
The lucky
raffle, so-
winner, 3987958.
Yay!
Nice.
Double check.
Joe, the guy who just won had the last audience question. Do we have time?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Next showcase is at 5:30.
Okay.
right.
We're gonna conclude with your question, sir. Who just won?
Basically for you, when you do period
Sorry.
pieces,
Oh,
do you
thank God.
recommend any research or do you get bogged down and doing too much research?
Yes. Yes. I actually think that books tend to be a really great resource for period pieces because the internet tends to be if you don't have access to like an academic library and whatnot, it can be a little difficult to find great information that feels really deep. But like your library is the best place for deep period research, I find.
I want to do a story about Storyville in New Orleans.
Yeah, I just moved here from New Orleans, so Storyville's close to my heart.
About the Drafthouse area.
Yeah.
I don't know if the documentation, if they wanted that really known. There's like a lot of information.
New Orleans loves Storyville though, so like I feel like it might not be from that era. The research wouldn't necessarily be from that era, but there's been a lot of, at least from what I've seen, there's a lot of excitement around Storyville. So I feel like those books probably exist now. Hopefully. Godspeed on your story. That sounds awesome.
Yeah.
All right, I guess that wraps up the this awesome panel. Give a round of applause for our amazing writers and creatives, because they do a lot of other things. And before we conclude, if you have any last minute plugs, social media you want to throw out to people.
Sure, why not? See the Tree Productions. That sounds exactly how it sounds, or spelled exactly how it sounds. See the Tree Productions. You can follow on Instagram, and if you get the opportunity, it will be touring. We'll be back in theaters, and then also on streaming. I'm not sure if the contract is signed with it, but yet because it hasn't been signed yet. But check out Euphoria by Julian Roosevelt. It should be on any major I'm not even gonna project. I'm gonna jinx it by saying who it's gonna be with. But it's happening soon. Euphoria by Julian Roosevelt. Okay. When you find it.
Not to be confused with the HBO version.
No, not the HBO. There's no Zendaya's not in this one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other plugs and promotions?
You can just follow me pretty much everywhere at TJA Comics. Troy Jeffrey Allen, but TJA Comics. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram.
I'm at juliehaberstick.com. Also, I love talking to people. So like, hi, I'm here. This is what I look like. Come talk to me.
Yep.
And at juliehaberstick.com, my first book is on there right now. It's called Coyote Gratitude. Coyote Gratitude, a cross-country coming of age. And I'm really excited about it and whatnot. So happy to share that with y'all too.
Yeah, congratulations.
So my name is David FRITZSON, and I've noticed that in the years people have had trouble spelling my last name. It's literally Fritz and Son put together. So I decided to make my company name Son of a Fritz. So you can find me on Instagram, just Son of a Fritz, all one word. You can find me on YouTube at Son of a Fritz Films, but if you find one of them, you're going to find the other pretty easily. And yeah, if you like basically seeing short films with dialogue-heavy stuff, that's the place to be. I did want to also part with one last thing, that if there's anything you take from me, it's this. As you're writing, I want you to think of this, that when you're writing, all of that uncertainty, all of that self-doubt doesn't mean we're on the verge of failure. It means we're actually onto something.
Yeah, true.
And those times I've had that mentality has been the most successful stuff I've done. So please keep that in mind for yourselves. So.
Advice for life too.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Son of a Fritz, baby. So also, I love talking too, so come say hi to me.
All right, David, Julie, Christian, Troy, thank you so much for participating in this panel. 2 more huge events. We Make Movies Here starting at 5:30. And then tonight, the awards ceremony, closing night party. Don't want to miss that. 8 p.m. to 11 p.m. That's going to be incredibly awesome as well. So thank you. Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yes, we have Walker Hayes, comedian extraordinaire. We'll be doing the opening monologue. Yes.
Nice. Well, we don't want to be there for that. So.
All right. Well, thank you all for attending. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.